You get paired with Jack Nicklaus at the Australian Open. What was that moment like?
I shit my pants. Sorry.
Well, let me just sum this up with a couple of words. First of all, Greg Norman's an icon in the game of golf. Okay? He's a great player. We've been friends for a long time. And regardless of what happens, he's going to remain a friend.
He made me want to retire. That's actually what Greg Norman has said about one of the greatest champions in golf history. The great white shark is not someone who gives praise easily. He's relentless, intensely competitive, and fiercely proud of his own legacy and accomplishments. For him to say that someone made him question whether he should even continue playing, well, that tells you everything about the deep respect he reserved for only a handful of golfers throughout his career. Throughout his career, Greg Norman has repeatedly cited exactly 6 golfers as the foundational pillars of his entire philosophy, not just as a player, but as a businessman, a disruptor, and an innovator. These 6 men shaped how he thought about competition, how he built his empire, and ultimately, how he challenged the entire structure of professional golf. This is the story of those 6 legends and the deep respect Norman carries for each one. Let's start with the man who made Norman want to retire. That's Jack Nicklaus. The Golden Bear is what Norman calls the ultimate standard. Nicklaus holds the record of 18 major championships and 73 PGA Tour victories. But for Norman, the numbers only tell part of the story. What truly matters is how Nicklaus conducted himself through triumph and defeat. It's about the manner of his dominance, not just the dominance itself. Nicklaus mentored Norman during his early career. At the 1986 Masters, the 46-year-old Nicklaus shot a final round 65 to win his 6th green jacket, narrowly edging out Norman. Instead of resentment, Norman's respect deepened. He saw it as the ultimate demonstration of longevity and competitive will. A man in his late 40s outthinking and outplaying the best player in the world. What amazed Norman most was Nicklaus's ability to balance a prolific course design business with sustained major championship success. Norman watched this carefully. Nicklaus was winning majors across 3 decades. That's a feat few players, even Norman himself, have been able to replicate. This mentorship era gave Norman a front row seat to what elite-level dominance truly requires. It wasn't just talent or hard work. It was a systematic approach to longevity that combined business acumen with competitive fire. Years later, their relationship fractured over LIV golf. Norman alleged Nicklaus attended early presentations and gave his blessing, then became an unwavering PGA Tour supporter. Nicklaus viewed institutional stability as paramount. Norman saw it as a restrictive monopoly. Norman took the lessons from the ultimate standard and applied them to a vision Nicklaus would not endorse. Next comes Arnold Palmer. If Nicklaus was the competitive standard, Palmer was the commercial blueprint. Norman respects Palmer not merely as a champion, but as the primary disruptor of golf's traditional ecosystem. Before Palmer's rise in the late 1950s, golf was perceived as stodgy and elitist. It was a game for the wealthy and privileged. Palmer single-handedly changed that perception. His aggressive style of play and his earthy relatability resurrected the game for the common man. He transformed golf into a televised spectacle that resonated with the working class. Palmer didn't just play golf, he disrupted the entire sports culture. Palmer was the first athlete to recognize that a career could be leveraged into a massive multi-sector commercial brand. Palmer built Palmer Enterprises, which included dealerships, aviation ventures, and the Golf Channel. Norman viewed this as a roadmap for long-term stability and followed by establishing Great White Shark Enterprises in 1993, moving beyond endorsement to building a brand where he maintained control over intellectual property. The business parallels are striking. Palmer created Arnie's Army and the umbrella logo. Norman created the Great White Shark brand and 4-color shark logo. Palmer pioneered the Golf Channel. Norman developed Shark Experience technology. Palmer diversified into aviation and luxury goods. Norman into wine, beef, and design. The parallels show Norman was studying the Palmer playbook strategically, but Norman's respect for Palmer goes deeper. Norman has lamented that if Palmer and Nicklaus had owned their intellectual property from the start, they'd be billionaires. This insight drove Norman's role in LIV golf. He viewed the PGA Tour structure as unfair, where governing bodies accrued wealth while players' brands were restricted. Palmer showed him the way. Norman decided to push it further. The third figure in Norman's pantheon is Gary Player. While Palmer and Nicklaus provided commercial and competitive models, Player provided something else entirely. He showed Norman the path to becoming a true global ambassador. Player Player earned the nickname the Black Knight. He was the first truly international player to win the Masters. He's one of only 5 men to complete the modern career Grand Slam. But what Norman respects most is not just Player's tournament record. It's his relentless commitment to international golf. Player was the indefatigable traveler. He traveled millions of miles to grow the game globally. He accumulated 165 worldwide victories, mostly outside the PGA Tour. This was revolutionary for its time. Player understood something fundamental. Golf's future was global, not American-centric. Norman's own career followed this Player model. He won 88 professional tournaments worldwide. 33 came in Australasia, 14 in Europe. This international focus became the foundation for LIV Golf, prioritizing events in Australia, Asia, and Europe. The golf, but louder mantra extends from Player's belief that the game's growth depends on global reach. Gene Sarazen is the 4th golfer Norman deeply respects. Sarazen, known as the Squire, was one of the first true world players. What makes Norman's respect for Sarazen unique is his role in professionalization and innovation. Sarazen was a pioneer who understood the technical and commercial value of innovation. In the early 1930s, Sarazen invented the sand wedge. This single invention revolutionized the short game and changed how golf was played forever. Sarazen's role in creating the Grand Slam legacy is something Norman frequently praises. Before Sarazen, there was no concept of a Grand Slam in golf. Sarazen essentially created that framework. For Norman, Sarazen represents the era of the professional who was also an inventor and a global traveler. This multifaceted approach to the game is exactly what Norman sought to replicate through his diversified business interests. Sarazen showed that greatness at golf didn't mean that was all you could do. You could invent, you could innovate, you could build something that lasted beyond your competitive years. Ben Hogan represents the 5th pillar of Norman's respect. Hogan is known as the Hawk, and for Norman, Hogan is the technician's ultimate hero. Hogan's legendary work ethic and his ability to return from a near-fatal car accident to dominate the sport created a standard that Norman has always deeply admired. Hogan is widely regarded as the best ball striker of all time. That reputation came from exhaustive practice sessions and his relentless pursuit of machine-like consistency. Norman often talks about Hogan as the man who found the secret through sheer repetition and discipline. This focus on the body as machine deeply influenced Norman's own approach to the game. During his peak years, Norman was known for an aggressive, high-intensity practice regimen. He often spent 8 hours a day on the range to maintain his accuracy and power. Even into his 50s, Norman's technical proficiency remained exceptionally high. He could still contend for championships at Birkdale because he maintained that same enthusiasm for the game and technical discipline he learned from studying Hogan. The discipline Hogan embodied was about understanding excellence through systematic repetition. Hogan developed what he called the secret through thousands of hours of focused practice. That's what Norman took from Hogan, not specific mechanics, but the commitment to mastery through repetition. Then there's Sam Snead. Snead is the 6th golfer in Norman's pantheon of respect. If Hogan represents mechanical discipline, Snead represents something equally important and powerful. Snead shows us the real power of natural talent and fluid rhythm. Slammin' Sammy Snead accumulated 82 PGA Tour wins. More importantly, Snead remained competitive well into his 70s. That's extraordinary. Most players fade significantly after their 40s. Snead's beautiful, fluid swing allowed him to preserve his talent through grace rather than just mechanical perfection. This is the duality that shaped Norman's approach. Hogan's discipline and Snead's fluidity, precision through repetition and natural rhythm. Norman's swing was characterized by powerful, rhythmic motion with aggressive lower body mechanics that mirrored golf's greatest legends. He synthesized both into something uniquely his own. Now let's connect all of this together to understand how Norman strategically built his global empire. These 6 golfers weren't just influences on his competitive game. They shaped every major strategic decision he made as a businessman and as a disruptor in professional golf. Their lessons became his blueprint for success. In the 1980s, Norman turned professional and aggressively started building his global brand presence. In 1981, he earned the Great White Shark nickname at the Masters. That became his core branding asset, and he protected it fiercely for the next 4 decades. In 1987, Norman established Greg Norman Golf Course Design. This move directly emulated Nicklaus and Palmer, who had already proven that course design was a lucrative and enduring revenue stream. By the end of the 1980s, Norman had also established the Shark Shark Shootout, an inaugural event that foreshadowed his future role as a tournament promoter and commissioner. The 1990s marked the peak of Norman's on-course dominance and the formalization of his business strategy. In 1993, while winning his second British Open, Norman founded Great White Shark Enterprises. This was his defining moment. He took everything he learned from Palmer, Nicklaus, and the others, and he consolidated it into a single corporate entity. That decade saw rapid expansion into diverse sectors. Apparel through the Greg Norman Collection, established in 1992 with Reebok. Real estate through Greg Norman Real Estate, founded in 1997, focusing on luxury communities built around his course designs. Wine through Greg Norman Estates in 1996. Food through the Greg Norman Australian Grill in 1999. This period also highlights the practical side of brand management. GWSE had to settle a trademark dispute with the Italian brand Paul & Shark. That settlement forced Norman to be very cognizant of his brand's positioning in the global market. It was a lesson in intellectual property that would later inform his arguments for LIV Golf. You can't control your brand if someone else owns the intellectual property. Following his retirement from full-time competition, Norman rebranded GWSC as the Greg Norman Company in 2016. This shift was intentional. It was designed to transition the business from a sports marketing firm where Norman was the commodity to a diverse global corporation capable of operating independently. The timeline of Norman's recent ventures demonstrates a clear move toward technological integration and market disruption. In 2017, he launched Shark Experience, a tech platform for golf carts integrating music, live, sports, and data analytics. In 2021, he was appointed as the founding CEO of LIV Golf Investments. In 2022, LIV Golf Invitational Series launched, a direct challenge to the PGA Tour's dominance. But here's what ties it all together. Every single strategic move Norman made was informed by the 6 golfers he respects most. The global vision came from Player and Sarazen. The business model came from Palmer. The competitive excellence came from Nicklaus. The technical discipline came from Hogan and Snead. Norman didn't invent these concepts. He synthesized them. He took the lessons of 6 legends and wove them into a unified strategic vision. There's a deeper insight worth understanding here. Norman understands that disruption in golf is cyclical. The rebels of one generation become the establishment pillars of the next, only to be challenged by a new generation using the same rhetoric of player rights and market fairness. The practical impact of Norman's philosophy has been substantial. His assertion that the PGA Tour unfairly restricted earnings led to structural changes in player compensation. LIV Golf forced the PGA Tour to increase prize purses and create signature events with higher payouts. Following Palmer's lead, Norman's branding attempts to make golf accessible to younger demographics. The conflict between Norman and Nicklaus over LIV has led to legal battles redefining the player-tour relationship. What's fascinating about Norman's pantheon is that it wasn't predetermined. These were the golfers who embodied the principles he valued: excellence, innovation, business acumen, global thinking, discipline, rhythm, disruption, evolution. When you look at Norman's career, it becomes clear he was always studying. He watched Palmer democratize the sport. He watched Nicklaus maintain excellence across decades. He watched Player take golf global. He watched Sarazen innovate. He watched Hogan discipline the body. He watched Snead preserve talent through grace. Then he synthesized it all. The respect Norman carries for these 6 golfers is genuine but practical. It's not sentimental. It's the respect of someone who learned from those before him, understood what made them great, and applied those lessons to his own journey. What's remarkable is that Norman recognized these 6 golfers were all teaching the same lesson. Excellence requires studying the masters. It requires taking what works and adapting it to your own context. It requires balancing competition with business. It requires thinking globally, maintaining discipline, and innovating when systems prevent progress. So when Norman says that someone made him want to retire, he's not exaggerating. He means it. He watched Nicklaus perform at a level that seemed superhuman. That realization drove Norman to train harder, to build more strategically, to think bigger about what a golfer could become. The current state of professional golf is a direct result of Norman's attempt to synthesize these lessons into a single disruptive entity. History will recognize that he did so by standing on the shoulders of 6 giants. The Great White Shark's transition from the fairways to the boardroom, and finally to the center of a global sporting war, is his real legacy. A professional philosophy built on the standards of the Golden Bear, the disruption of the King, the internationalist spirit of the Black Knight, the innovation of the Squire, the discipline of the Hawk, and the grace of Slammin' Sammy.